First and foremost, I'd like to welcome you guys to the second episode of the electrical diagnostics series that we're specifically running to try and get apprentices up to speed on modern car electronics. Sorry this took so long to get out. I was waiting for a very specific job to come in that met my requirements. I was looking for a series circuit, so not a series parallel, not a parallel, so I was looking for a basic series circuit. Like we discussed in the first video, to show some real world action on finding broken wires and green wires. I haven't figured out this one yet, so I'm going to walk you through what goes through my mind, but I do have a code for an open fuel injector circuit, so I'm hoping that means we just find a broken wire and we can move on with our day. So let's get started. So the very first thing we need to do when we get a vehicle in is we need to confirm the customer concern. If we have an intermittent concern, we don't want to be wasting the customer's time if it's not happening at that moment. So we want to go ahead and make sure that the vehicle is in fact displaying this code, has a check engine light on, and verify that the customer concern is currently present. Makes it a lot easier for us. If it is not currently present, we then want to go to talk to the customer and figure out what specific driving conditions they were driving in when it happened, try and get more information. A lot of the time, service advisors won't get that information for you. They're not going to ask things like how fast you were going, did you hit a bump, were you turning left? And all that can be very, very important as far as pinpointing the concern and finding out what's wrong with it, especially if it is an intermittent concern. So I've gone ahead and I've pulled up a couple of codes here, P0202, P0302, P0316, a couple other ones there. So I'm going to put the camera back on the mount and we're going to discuss them really quickly. So I went through, pulled some codes. First one here, P0202, cylinder 2 injection A circuit open. This is the one I'm hoping that we can find using Ohm's law and the principles that I taught in the last video. Basically they're expecting a broken wire. P0302, cylinder 2 misfire detected. So when you get a code like that, a lot of guys are like, oh, time for spark plugs, yada, yada, yada. This guy's done spark plugs already, as well as a coil pack on that cylinder. But in this case, P0202, an open injector circuit would absolutely cause a misfire on cylinder 2. So we could basically go ahead and ignore cylinder 2 misfire, because if you have no fuel in that cylinder, it's not firing. Of course there's a misfire. P0316, misfire detected on startup, first 1,000 revolutions. Again, you can ignore this one. This is related to P0202, the injector circuit being open. It's going to cause a misfire. So one of the reasons you want to use a wiring diagram almost right away when checking is right here's your second injector. Injector 2 up top, as you can see, gray, yellow, and then blue to splice, and then grounds. So I can already eliminate a large portion of what we need to check simply because I know every other injector currently works. So if every other injector currently works, that means from the splice onward, I'm good. So all I need to check is from the splice to here, and here to the injector 2 on the PCM. So I got to pull apart the engine. Let's start checking. Yeah, so I just got to quickly remove the cover, pull off the intake to get to the back to where the second injector is, and then we will start looking at wiring. Now that we've gained access to our injector, the one we want to look at right now is injector 2. So this guy here, this is the one that's giving us a misfire issue, as well as the fact that we've got another one right beside it. So the first thing I'm going to do is, if you remember back to that wiring diagram, how the blue wire went to the splice, and all the injectors went through the splice and then grounded together. That's the first thing I'm going to take a look at. I'm going to check this wire to this wire. Because if that reads as 0 ohms or the wire is good, that means that this side can go through the splice and to ground, because this injector isn't misfiring. Just we're checking from this injector to this injector, so we go all the way through down to over here. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I have a very specific multimeter and kit with correct pins. One thing you got to be really, really careful with when you're checking these things, you don't want to just shove your multimeter in there. You'll end up spreading the pins, and then you're going to start making intermittent concerns, because the pin will spread and not always make contact, and the car will start to do really funny things, and then you're going to be scratching your head and chasing your tail. So I've got a very specific set of pins that we're going to use, and I'm just going to get that set up. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. I have my multimeter set to ohms. That guy there. Focus, come in. Focus. That guy there. So that's basically checking through the wire to check if it's green or broken or anything like that. As you can see, we've got 0 ohms. So I'm going from blue on this injector to blue on that injector. And back to the wiring diagram, that confirms our ground side of the circuit's good. So the last thing we got to check now, and odds are where our fault is, provided the injector is okay, is going to be from the other wire all the way to the PCM. So I just wanted to quickly show you another one of these special tools that you can buy. As you can see, I'm in the injector there, I'm coming along, and then I'm tapping this gray-yellow wire, which is the injector wire, using this special tool right here. As you can see, the open is not there, so the open is currently going this way to the PCM. PCM's in that corner, we'll get to it eventually. But first, let me show you this tool. This specific tool right here is made by Power Probe, and it's actually pretty unique. It lets you pierce a wire. There's a little needle at the end there. I don't know how well you guys can see that. When you pull that down, little needle. So you put this onto your wire in that spot there, and you would tighten the back. That comes out, and it'll bottom out, and then the needle goes through and punctures the wire. So the reason I say there has to be a there has to be like a PSA about this as well, is because that does put a hole in the wire. So now what you've done is you've exposed the wire to the elements. So if you were to leave that hole where it is tiny, I probably won't even be able to show you how small it is on camera. Moisture could still get in there, and in 6 months they're gonna have a green wire and they'll be back for more electrical issues. So if you're going to use this, you need to, when you're done, take silicone, hot glue, something, and you have to reseal that wire. I personally use silicone, so I'll just put it on the wire, smear it on there, and then when it dries, it's sealed, and then you won't have a problem. I have now confirmed using that special tool, the middle of the circuit all the way up to the connector. So the next thing we gotta check now is the connector to the PCM, so our brake is likely gonna be somewhere in there. So before we start getting into some of the harder things here, I'm just gonna quickly run a component test. So I am currently plugged into a known good injector using special probes that come with my kit. And it reads 11.5 ohms of resistance. So before we start getting into all here, transmission, pulling apart everything, lifting up the car, pulling out fender liners, that sort of stuff, just quickly check the other injector as well. So a known good injector was 11. This one here, if you see right at the top, there's actually an M. So this is 10 million ohms. So I just decided to check this quickly before doing some of the harder checks. And we did the easy ones, and that injector is open. So we need a fuel injector. So I mean, that's an easy enough fix. I'll get it quoted out for the customer. At least I didn't spend the whole day pulling apart. I'm only about 15 minutes into this, and I figured I'd better do a component test, which is always a good idea. And there we go, fault found. So as you guys know, my biggest goal with this series is getting apprentices up to speed with how to do electrical diag. Too bad this one wasn't the green wire, but like I said, I hadn't diagnosed it to begin with. It came in, that was a full walkthrough how I diagnose stuff. I hope you guys learned something from this, as that is the goal of the channel. I hope you learned some of the special tools, piercing wires, correct probing techniques, and how to kind of go about and tackle electrical diag. I really hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you subscribe. I'll be releasing more apprenticeship videos on how to do electrical diag, rebuilding diffs, motors, that sort of thing. So subscribe, stay tuned.